I know that many of you will leave a concert and wonder how much of it is autotune. Did I actually sing live? Did I pay too much for a concert like that? Well, today I'm sitting down with Nick Dela Cruz, a seasoned sound engineer, and he's done it all from small scale concerts in clubs to stadiums with rock stars. He is going to uncover everything that goes on behind the scenes. We're talking about everything from lip syncing to click tracks to backtracks to who's actually responsible for that mic problem that Miguel experienced in J Hope's concert. So, if you've ever wanted to know what makes a show sound amazing, this one is for you. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Dela Cruz. Nick, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for what you're doing for the industry as well. This is so cool and so unique. I'm honored just to be here talking with you. So thank you for taking the time to do this with me.
Well, likewise, I actually, when I saw your YouTube channel, sorry, your IG channel, I was so curious about how you're doing things. So I have a lot of questions, and my subscribers actually sent in a lot of questions. So let's get right to it. But let's start with you first.
Okay.
So, how did you end up from? Take us to the beginning before you even ended up creating your own YouTube channel. What were you doing?
Absolutely. Great question. So I was a touring audio engineer and production manager. And I worked my way up through there, start at the very bottom, push boxes, try to figure out
Mhm.
how to way to get myself to the top and running sound. I ended up being able to run sound and do some cool tours. And my last tour, I was on with Stain and Godsmack and Hailstorm, and I was the monitor engineer for a drum tech for Hailstorm. It was awesome, and I got fired off that tour,
Okay.
and that wasn't awesome.
That
And
wasn't awesome.
what that started was the beginning of my sobriety. I ended up leaving the industry. I
Hmm.
ended up going and joining the military. I spent 9 years in the Navy. I
Hmm.
was an investigator, or no, I'm sorry, I was in navigation. I got stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. I was navigation, so I literally drove an aircraft carrier. Then I got stationed in Millington, Tennessee. It was my last look and my last order. I told them I didn't want to go, and they said there's a reason to call them orders and not suggestions. You're going. So
Okay.
I ended up being in Millington, Tennessee as an investigator. So I tracked down military deserters and did prisoner transports, and it was crazy. It was a lot. But I wanted to get out. So I wanted to do a proof of concept. And it's interesting that, sometimes we give up our passions, but it kind of seems a way to stick in there through us.
Right.
And there's this thing that who's the guy that does dirty jobs? I forgot his name. My goodness, it's horrible. But he talks about this passion versus opportunity thing that we're so
Mike
focused
Rowe.
on. Mike Rowe,
Okay.
exactly. Um, he talks about this passion versus opportunity. Sometimes we're so focused on our passion that we miss these opportunities that come by. And that was one thing for me. I was so focused on this passion for me. Um, and then once I gave that up and reset my life, and I really needed to reset my life to be able to get away from a lot of the muck I was in,
Hmm.
I was able to uh, change my entire life, get some structure on it, get some good things going on. Then I get fast forward to Millington, Tennessee, and I wanted to get out of the military. I wanted to do a proof of concept to get out. So I started a production company, and it went really, really good.
Hmm.
My business partner and I, he had uh, what was it, all the BB King's clubs, Lafayette, and Avitas were all of a sudden on 10 cruise ships with Holland America, and it was skyrocketing, and it was
Wow.
great. I I allowed myself to make some mistakes and just kept
Hmm.
learning and kept making more mistakes and just making it a little bit better each time. And that was a long-winded answer of that's how I started this. I love it. I ended up getting also hired as for another rep position in Atlanta, Georgia, and I started this content thing, got hired as this, went over to that job, and
Right.
it's in the music world. They love what I'm doing. I love I'm doing this, and it's been great.
Okay. The nature of your YouTube channel is that you interview. Usually, I see you on site.
Yes, all of them are
You're
on site besides
yeah.
one.
Yeah, so that means you're at some point in the future, or at least if you want to grow, you really have to go and get in touch with people that are doing the concerts, and it shouldn't just be where you are, but all over the world. And then you have this other job. What do you plan to do? How are you going to balance this?
That's a very good question. The good thing about living in Atlanta is that everybody comes through. All concerts come through Atlanta, Birmingham, Greenville, or Nashville. So all I really got to do is wait for them to come here. Unless it's a bigger one, then I'll go over and travel for that. But
Hmm.
that's what I got some sponsors that help out with that. But I've been really building a team to be able to help support me and do what I do because I love my job. I love what I do, and I love this as well. But it's been understanding what is my most valuable asset, and that's my time,
Right,
and where can I outsource that and get help with that and be realistic with that. And also understanding at the very beginning, I had a mentor of mine tell me when I first started this, you got to understand your why.
right,
Once you figure out your why, then money and other stuff won't dictate that. So I spent some time figuring, why am I doing what I'm doing, and then stay within that lane.
right,
Allow room for growth with it, but also be realistic and be open and honest with everybody. My job, I'm open and honest with them with it. I love it, and it's been great. So building the team around there to be helping to be supportive of it, I want to continue to do both of them for as long as I can. I mean,
right, right,
been
right.
great so
Uh,
far. Never
yeah.
fucking a year and be like, oh no, just sitting here
uh,
holding coffee, just shaking.
is this the for your channel or for what you do? Maybe you're not limiting your vision to just the YouTube channel, but what is the big vision for it? Where is it going 5, 10 years from now?
Great question. My goal is I want to be a trusted and valuable resource. I want
Okay.
to be uh, known in the community to be able to, people can look to for advice or for help and for training and to help the future generations. I want to give a realistic view into what it's like in the touring world. I'm not going to be I don't want to be showing off brands and say how awesome this microphone is because of all the features for it. That's not what I do. My thing is that I want to tell the stories. And there's a ton of videos out there that do a bunch of products and they do that. That's not my thing. But for the growth of what I want to do, we're moved into doing bands as well. And I was hesitant to doing bands because there's a lot of interviews with bands already. You see them all the time. If they're kind of the same. Nothing against people who do them, but it's really a lot of, what were you thinking about when you wrote the song? What's the name of the band? Where'd you get the name of it? And we have now settled on that within my why,
Mhm.
we are telling the touring production story of the bands. You're gonna step into where they're at now and where they came from on that tour. If you want to find out history about the band, you can go find something else out with that. But I want to give a view into because here's the thing realistically, most people aren't going to be Madonna. It's
Mhm.
probably not going to happen.
Right.
Could you could you be the sound person for Madonna? Maybe. Could you be the tech person for Madonna? Maybe. Could you be on the crew there? Maybe. So I
Mhm.
want to be able to give insight into that, into the entire live world, but also there are decisions that artists make and there's consequences, positive and negative consequences. And what is the results of those decisions, I would love to be able to showcase that. So there's some bands we're going to be going to what's called pre-production, rehearsals, and then the show. Because when the fans come, they see that day of, but what they
Correct.
don't see is the months and months and months and months and months and months that went into putting in that amazing production. So
Right.
we're going to follow that from the artist perspective of what was your mindset? What are you trying to portray for this? And hopefully when the fans go, they can be like, oh my gosh, I see that. He wanted that couch that wouldn't float up for there. And I saw all this with that. And that it gives a whole appreciation and value for the artwork because these artists they put a ton of time and effort and energy and there's an amazing crew that a lot of people don't know about that's happening behind the scenes that is truly special. So my goal is our next one is to be able to tell more of those stories from an artist perspective as well. And then the long-term goal, I don't this is my dream is
Mhm.
that I would like to. I've got a pretty good proof of concept at the high tier level right now. I want to
Mhm.
copy and paste that to other verticals. meaning what is the most popular things you watch, motorsports or NFL or any sort of ball game, that what's the stories behind the people, those unsung heroes.
Right.
Forget the artist for it, but you got an NFL player, the likelihood of you being the NFL player, maybe not,
Right.
but could you work on the field? Could you be one of the assistants? Could you be one of the coaches? And then I'm working on connecting with universities to be able to help. Hey, you love that. Now, how can you get plugged into that? What are things you could do to be able to have those resources? So I'm also working right now on my website. We have I started creating groups
Hmm.
so people can go there and they're all free resources on there to where you can look for jobs, you can post for jobs on there,
Oh, okay.
you can ask professionals on there, and each professional I've either worked with or I know it has a verification on there. So you got one on there that's called Ask a Pro. That one you can go and ask a professional on there, and they are all certified with a badge on this. So there's not going to be any keyboard warriors. You can be open and honest with what kind of information you would like to get from them. And you see a lot of that online of a lot of these people who say they're pros for it,
Is it
but
is
they're
it
not
this
really.
one book one on
No,
one?
it's the groups.
Oh, groups. Okay. Let's go
Yes.
to groups. Um,
Yeah. So each one of those are groups that people can join and be a part of. There's one on
okay.
there called Ask a Pro, so that people can literally go there and ask a professional, and you can see members on there that are legit professionals.
Hmm.
They could be verified pro or they've been featured on there. So you can go, that Kyle right there, he's the front of house guy for Creed. So you get
Mm.
to hear from these real time people. Frank Stambolone, he's with Luke Bryan.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I can assure you that many of my subscribers will actually go to this site because
Yeah,
they're always they're always looking for like actual professionals that are doing the things that are supporting their favorite artists to understand what's happening. Okay,
absolutely.
let's go into the technicality. So many of these questions are actually sent in by my subscribers. So they really are curious about what happens backstage putting together a concert. So first, describe to us, please, what does an audio engineer in a concert do?
Absolutely. It depends on the scale, but typically your audio engineer is all the sound you hear from those speakers,
Hmm.
they control that.
Okay.
There's two audio engineers. There's a front of house and there's a monitor engineer. The front of house one is the one that you see at the concert, that the
Okay.
ones that's in the middle of the crowd.
Right.
So all the bands and all those inputs, he's mixing all of that together for the sound that you hear as the audience. There's a monitor engineer who's on the stage. He's in control of all the stuff that the band hears, be it in ears or be it monitors. Um, Arguably, uh, they're the same, but also very different. The
Hmm.
monitor engineer job is one of the very few jobs that I've noticed that your ability, your technical ability comes second to your ability to communicate. And
Mm.
that's the most important part, to being able to understand what people want, to give them what they want, and also what they don't need as well. Because sometimes they'd be asking for more and more and more when you really need to be taking stuff away. And everybody communicates a little bit differently as well. So to be able to give them what they want in a way that they maybe not be able to tell you. So
Hmm.
one side you've got at the front of house, you can have 30,000 people for it, which is important. But the monitor engineer, you may have for the most important people because they sign your paycheck, and
Right.
you got to be able to figure out how do you communicate with those people, get them what they want, not what you want, what they want,
Right.
what they need.
Right.
So does that help answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. So if somebody, you know how artists have an in ear, and they
Yep.
we see them all the time mentioning, going up or going down. So I'm assuming, because I'm not an audio engineer, I'm assuming that they probably want the volume of their voice up or down or something like that. That's not on the sound engineer.
Well, they're both sound engineers. You got a monitor
Sorry.
engineer and a front of house engineer. Now, there may be on your smaller bands, the person at front of house may be doing both. Once you get bigger, you can afford to have two people. One person side stage, just focusing the band. And even some of the bigger bands, like I was just with Pearl Jam, they got two monitor engineers, one for the singer and then one for the band. Because
Oh,
there's I think Kenny Chesney as well has that to where one for him and then one for the rest of the band. But yeah, it's a way of communicating. There's other resources that they have as well. They're called talkback mics. You'll see
Mhm.
a microphone somewhere else that they go walk and talk into that, and there's a little button they push. They can talk to the monitor engineer and tell them. But you're right, 100% right. There, you go see them talk, and they're point or up or down with it.
Yeah.
It's communicating to them like, "Hey, fix that."
Yeah. So in the last concert that I attended, which are you familiar with the boy band BTS?
How can how can you not be?
Great. I always check because I still find it amazing that people who have absolutely no interest in pop music, or sometimes like they're not so much into music, would still know their name. And I'm like, okay, we're doing great. So I
I
know
couldn't tell
that.
you a song, but I know the band.
So in the last concert that I watched, one of the members went on tour, a solo tour, J Hope, and he had a guest. So they're singing, the two of them were singing on stage, and it turned out that the mic of the guest wasn't working, so we can't hear him. So whose responsibility is that?
Okay. That's a tough one to answer because there's a lot of variables for that, but that could come into a couple different things. Uh, it could, a lot of times they look at the front of house engineer because when the audience is there, they'll look back at the sound guy, which may not even be his fault.
Uh-huh.
But to be able to fix that issue, a lot of times you're supposed to be testing those things beforehand.
Right.
And at that level, I'm sure is tested beforehand. There could be a plethora of issues, but you have to use the resources that are on hand stage. So once you see that issue, typically you'll see the monitor engineer or a somebody else on the stage, a tech over there, to be able to help fix and mitigate that issue. It could be the front of house person because you're right, that sound coming out, they're responsible for it, but the issue could be something on stage that he has no control. He's not able
Right.
to get that because he can't fix what doesn't come to him. Was it something that it was gone for the entire thing or took a minute to do it?
They just replaced the mic, is what they
Oh,
did.
yeah.
After a
Yeah. So
verse, they just.
it could be a dead battery that they had to switch out. Sometimes it's the easiest thing. There's always um, fail safes, and you always have some sort of redundancy. Always, especially at that level. You're gonna have an extra mic ready, extra pack for their ears ready, extra instrument ready, because when failure is not an option, you need to be able to figure it out. Now, when it's
Right.
time to fix that issue,
Right.
we'll do it then another time.
Yeah, it was because we were high up, so we can actually see like the person running from the other side of the stage, and it was like, oh, whoever that guy is, my heart goes for him because it was a big stage. It was in
Yeah.
BMO, it was a stadium, and so he had to go around from the other side of the stage to the other side of the stage, go up, and just hand him the other mic. So
Sometimes that's the easiest thing. We're gonna take away the problem, and here's the easy.
yeah. Okay, Miguel is the name of the guest. All right. So okay, so thank you for that. Next, what do artists actually hear in their in-ear? Is it just their voices or everything?
It is what they want to hear. That monitor
Ah,
engineer has an entire soundboard there that he is giving them what they want. Now, it's dependent upon your personal preference. Some people only want to hear themselves. Some people want to hear a mixture of everything. It just varies on their personal preference,
okay.
honestly.
So if there are in BTS there are seven members of the band,
Yep,
then one member A can be hearing just his voice and member B can be hearing everybody else's voice and no instruments, or maybe member C just the instruments.
correct. Every
Okay.
member of that band is going to have a specific mix. So that monitor engineer is in control of making that mix. And they spend a bunch of time in pre-production and rehearsals getting that mix dialed in. Granted, things could change from show to arena to stadium, indoor, outdoor. So they may need some adjustments like we are talking about before.
Mhm.
But each person has it set specifically for them, for the way they want to hear that, for the way they want to perform.
Wow. Okay.
And
So
you can kind of tell sometimes if, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you can tell there's tricks you can do if someone's straining or if someone's not giving enough. Sometimes if they're straight, like it could be they don't hear themselves enough, so they're trying to compensate for that. And you could really hurt your voice or even hurt your ears if you're not giving them the correct mix. So there's some monitor engineers that know their artist enough to be able to like, oh, I need to give him some more of that. Or if they're singing really quiet, you can back off their ears a little bit so they feel like they need to be
mm,
louder with it. But yeah.
oh, interesting. How bad is it from a technical perspective? What are if the in-ear doesn't work? We hear this a lot, like, oh, Mariah Carey, for example, in one of her performances, she was like, I couldn't sing because I couldn't hear the in ear. And I was like, oh, the in ear wasn't working. So the question of a lot of people is that what, you can't hear it from, like, you can't hear the instrument when you're on stage? Like, what the, isn't that just an excuse? That's why you didn't sing or something like that. So from a technical perspective, how bad is it really?
Good question. Um, so there's been a movement to have more in-ears and less noise on stage. The
Okay.
less noise on stage, the better, because you've got a lot, you have microphones on there, and the
Mm-hmm.
more noise is the more chaos with it. So in reality, sometimes the stage may be pretty quiet and you won't even like the guitars or whatever maybe plugged directly in, and there's not that noise that's going on there. Now, here's where it gets interesting. From the time that that instrument is played, from it goes in the chord, goes all the way into the patch, goes all the way into front of house, goes all the way back, goes to the speakers, it goes out. There's quite a bit of there's quite a bit of delay that
Mm-hmm.
happens with that. So it'd be like singing and then something else behind that. So you can't really even time that in. So taking it out can be very tough, and the timing's gonna be very up to where if you grab a microphone and talk with it, you're not even you can't even think because it's so far off. That's just with your ears. You can have wedges around. You'll see a lot of artists that have both, that have ears and wedges. So if they do want to pop it off, it's there as a fail safe with it. But that's a very real thing. Being able to have that and be able to, if you take it out, there's nothing you can really do with it. Or if you're missing that in your ear, it's like
Yeah.
not having it. How do you sing the key with it when there's so much chaos going on, especially with a huge
Exactly.
show?
Yeah, I do remember that Mariah. The first time I remember hearing about that in-ear problem was Mariah Carey. I think it was the New Year's celebration time in New York.
Yeah.
And she said like I couldn't sing because I couldn't hear the in-ear. And initially, because I didn't know about the reality of the importance of an in-ear, I thought it was like, oh no, that's just an excuse. You couldn't sing. That's it. And then lately, I've been hearing more and more about it, and I thought, oh, maybe it is true. Maybe it
Yeah,
is
no,
true.
it's very much true. And a lot of these in-ears are designed to go way inside your ear and designed to cut out the noise from around you. So especially if you have a quiet stage, uh, and you pop that thing back out, you're just not gonna have it. So how can you sing on key with something you don't even have? And a lot of bands nowadays have click tracks to where it counts you into it. So you'll be off, you not even know where you're at with it, and it's
Hmm.
just
Right, right.
oops.
Yeah. We will actually go into click tracks in a bit.
Okay.
But so how do you, is there a difference in how you handle, again, more on the technical side of it, like how you handle small clubs versus stadiums versus arenas in terms of making sure, I guess, just make in terms of making things work? Is there a stark difference when the stadium is bigger, when the venue is bigger versus when it is smaller from your
Uh,
job?
yes, there is a difference, but the fundamentals are still the same throughout. There are more speakers and there is more. If you go into a warehouse, in this room, if I clap, there's not going to be much. If I go in a warehouse and clap, you're going to hear that everywhere. So
Right.
some of those effects and those things you had that were in a smaller venue, you use those at a bigger venue at a massive scale, it's going to sound way different than that. So there is definitely a difference with it, but the fundamentals are still the same. You can't just skip to one without doing it. So if you, and I'd say arguably, if you can handle it at an arena level or a stadium level, it's easier to go back that way. So I'd say transitioning from a small club up to a bigger one, it's tough. And I think there's some engineers that, and I'll speak for myself. One of the things I had a hard time with was making up for insecurities with a quantity over a quality. It's hard to back it down and have
Hmm.
everything sound really good. And my insecurity, I'd want to push it louder, which just brings more and more and more and more. It's way harder to bring it all down. Now, if you add a bunch more speakers and a bunch more room, if you can't figure out how to dial that in and work with the room around you, you're going to have a tough time. But in essence, the fundamentals are still the same. It's still the same idea. There's going to be some adjusting and tightening it in when you have that much power and that much stuff going on around you. How do you use that wisely without blowing people away? So
Right.
there's definitely a difference.
So if you're in the front of house, you're not alone on that. right? You have other people working. Okay, so you're not like a one man team. I'm going to manage everything. Would
No.
Okay, so do you would you from an artist perspective, I don't know if you can answer this question, but from an artist perspective, do you know the biggest difference between doing a stadium in terms of the sound and a smaller venue
Biggest difference? Uh,
from a technical perspective?
there's a lot more horsepower going on. There's a lot more stuff happening. There's a lot more things that you have a bigger teams going on with it instead of you being the one man thing. For you talked about it yourself, like even at the front of house position, there's lights, there's a lighting director there, there's a audio front of house person there, there's a video director there, there's a spotlight operator there. Um, so you're going to have a massive teams to be able to help. Even like with Metallica, you're going to have people who are just focused on power, people who are just focused on cable, you're going to be people just focused on generators. And when you're dealing with that many speakers around, there's definitely a difference in sound, but you're gonna have the correct equipment, the correct person for it. And you'll notice that there's a lot of bands, for better or worse, once they start getting big, they tend to shift into bringing in a person who's more experienced at that realm. So you have the
Hmm.
entry engineer who's been there, who's kind of used to it, but don't you get to the big boy level? It feels bad for some of those engineers. They want to get there, but like, no, we need to bring in the pros for this because honestly, like the one we are talking about, the BTS, if you have situations that can have failures, and how do you know what you not know?
Yeah.
And you're paid to be able to figure out and to be proactive instead of reactive. This may have been an issue before, so we'll be able to figure all this stuff out. And especially with bigger arenas, you now have the ability to walk, and there's just something called a thrust. It goes in front of the stage
Hmm.
that artists can walk out and go in front of the speakers. So feedback is a big deal. What feedback is, I don't mean to get too technical, is audio going into microphone and making a loop. You're hearing that frequency making that loop, and you have a bigger chance of that happening with a massive amount of speakers behind you. So to be able to understand how to do that and how to make it sound good without making
Right.
it crazy.
I
Yeah.
actually that's one of the puzzle for me because I see a lot of my favorite rock band of all time is Linkin Park, and I
Oh, I
see
was just with them.
oh, you were, oh my god.
Yeah. That video's coming out soon.
Okay, well, I'm so okay. You made me excited. Okay, uh, um, Chester when he was still, with us.
Yeah.
I would see him standing on the speaker a lot, and sometimes he would lean into it. I'm like, there's no feedback. But I know he sings live. I've never known him to not sing live. So I was like, how do they actually do that? He was like right in front of the speaker, but no feedback. So amazing work. I was like, I did not even know that was possible. Okay, so I guess since working on sound for so long, do you actually know, even if you're not working in that concert, do you know when someone is actually using singing live or lip syncing, or if they're using a backtrack? Would you know just from listening?
Uh, if you, the way you're going to tell is by people doing a lot of physical exhaustion stuff that most people couldn't do without being heavy at breath. There are artists who do a lot of cardio work to make up for that,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to have a lot of cardio work. But you could tell within breaths people take or pauses people take. But you'll be surprised for the majority of the time they don't lip sync unless it's a televised thing. Um, but most people nowadays there's been so much scare with it. It's just it's not happening. You'll see autotune a bit, but what people don't know about autotune is that you kind of got to be 90% of the way there anyways to be able to make it sound good. Um, but yeah, you can tell, and most bands use tracks. The reason bands use tracks though is there's a lot of stuff that has been recorded in the studio that you can't bring an orchestra with you, and you can't
Mm-hmm.
make this one-off sound. You're not going to bring one fiddle player for this for that one song, so they want to be able to have that experience for the audience to be able to hear that as well with it. Or you have
Okay.
some, I'm talking the big level.
Right, right, right. Actually, that was my next question. We hear autotune a lot. How common is it now? And I know that a lot of people kind of frown at it because it doesn't bring out like the actual, for me especially, I love doing going to concerts, and I feel like I'm there so I can hear your voice live, and I would take it uh, lock, stock, and barrel. I don't care. Just don't give me a pre-packaged voice because I can do that at my home using a, a streaming platform. So, how common is it? And I guess you answered it a little bit, but what does it actually do? Like for me, who's a non-professional singer, can it actually make me sound good?
Uh, so there are threshold levels with autotune. You can have it sound the signature T-Pain voice that everybody knows, but that is a very extreme version of autotune to whereas most of the time autotune is going to be used without it being noticed. You got to be 90% of the way there for it, and it's really just a little bit of a bump towards that direction. There are bands that definitely use it. I think it's kind of taboo because people don't want them to think they're using it, and there's some insecurities with that. But I mean, these guys are singing night after night after night after night after night. That's got to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some artists, and I won't say any of the names, but like there's ones that there's a certain portion of that song they'll have their vocal for it because they need a break and need a breath to be able to like it's going so fast. They're like, okay, I can get back into it now.
Yeah.
But I think most artists want you to get that experience and want
Mm-hmm.
you to have that connection with it. But it's definitely a tool. It's definitely using. There's a lot of them that use it in the studios. Most songs on the record are going to be with autotune, but it's not that drastic thing that you see on like with T-Pain, but it's used probably more often than you think.
Right. Yeah, I've heard about I guess in the pop realm, a lot of singers are criticized. Well, I guess we can start with Britney Spears. That was
Mhm,
one of the biggest issues when she was at the prime of her career and she was still doing touring. Like she would lip sync a lot,
mhm.
and I guess she never even denied it. So I guess the question would be like, from a personal perspective, where do you draw the line when you're
For
watching
lip
this?
syncing.
Yeah, for lip syncing or for um auto tunes. Like how much is acceptable to not spoil the experience of the audience if you had your way?
I don't think lip syncing is not something that is very common anymore. Not like it was before. It's just not really a thing. I think there's more background vocals that are
Hmm.
there that you just can't have that entire crew with it. And for the autotune portion, I think that is an artistic choice. I think there are some songs that call for that type of sound with it. And if
Hmm.
that is used as an artistic choice for that sound, I think it's your choice to do that. Just like it's your choice to use distortion on a guitar. Um, but I think most people are using it in a way to be a little bit of spice on top or a little bit of help just to kind of, especially with harmonies, when you're a little bit off with it, it'll just bump them a little bit closer. But most of the time, you have to be pretty close there. You're not going to probably notice that they're using
Hmm.
auto tune with it. But there are some you can get really specific with auto tune to where you can, if you know that there's one note they're off at, you can. Oh, hi, Puffy.
I'm sorry, he
Oh,
just had to go on
right
my
over
lap.
there. Oh, what's your name?
Debak.
Oh, you're a
He's
sweetheart.
he is the star of my YouTube channel. I always say that if I stop bringing him into my videos, people are not gonna watch me anymore. They just want to see
Oh,
him.
oh.
Okay, so
That's
sorry.
so sweet. You're great. There's an auto tune, and you'll see it'll show up a keyboard on there, and you can go to specific notes. Like if you know this note you're gonna be flat on, you can change just that one note to where that was just gonna kind of shift you over and help you over a little bit. But if it was my choice, I don't think it's an issue. I just think with people, I wish everybody's more honest about it.
Right, right,
But
right.
I think there's such a negative connotation with it where people think that you're a horrible singer if you're using autotune. That's not true. These guys are amazing. They're out there killing it. You have to have a great voice. And I guess it was like the Britney Spears out there. Arguably, her voice was not great,
Yeah.
but I if I had my say, I'd say we'd be more open with it and more honest with it, and hopefully get rid of some of the taboo
Right.
of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Okay, so you mentioned click track, which is not
Yep,
something a lot of people are actually very familiar. So can you describe the difference between a backing track, a click track, and like we hear this term a lot, especially in the pop world, like all record and music record. So can you tell us the difference?
absolutely. You're also going to see click tracks and backing tracks a lot in house of worship and in churches. Uh, the extent that what they're used at is very dependent upon the artist,
Mhm.
and dependent how you want to do it. The click track keeps you on beat. That's the whole role of that, and it keeps everybody together. The backing tracks are used as supplemental for the show, and typically are extra instruments that you can't have. There are theatrical stuff that was created in the studio that you want to have there with it, and you can use those backing tracks. A lot of times they're coincided and they work together, and there's usually a laptop that runs that you can hit start. Some bands are so they use that, and it dictates the entirety of the show with it, and you'll have something called time code. Time code, everything is synced to that. Your lights are synced to that. Your sound can be synced to that. Your playback synced to that. Even your guitar pedals can be synced to that. So when you hit start the show, it knows exactly when to cue everything, so that you hit play, pyro hits at the right time, the LED wall hits at the right time, the guitar key changes at that time. So a lot of it's structured into that, and even the click in there. So the click is going to be a guide to help you. It can be as much as verse 2, 3, 4, or a dink, 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 dink in the back. So you know where the beginning of the beat is, and everybody can kind of be on the same page with it. The
Okay.
backing tracks are just going to be supplemental to help out that. But a lot of times they're together because you can build the click in the backing track.
Right. So can you, if I'm a singer, for example, and I have my in ear, can I hear both the backing track and a click track in my in ear, or it's usually just one or the other?
So that console, the monitor engineer, has an input for every single thing. For every, it could be every single track, your click, every band member, so they can mix whatever you want specifically into your ears. I'm talking at the big levels. You can get it scaled down, have them both into one off a laptop if you're a little, baby band in a band. But yeah, you can adjust how much of that you want as opposed to what track. So that's what the rehearsals are, is to get that all set up for you.
Okay, got it. So some people would actually have their voices recorded, and then they would just sing over the
That's
their.
very popular in hip hop. Hip hop, you're especially the smaller ones,
Oh,
you're kind of rapping over yourself, honestly.
right. Yeah,
Very popular for the smaller ones. The bigger ones is more of it, but yeah,
yeah, yeah. As a
very
sound
popular.
engineer, can you like spot it? Like, oh, he's just singing over himself.
For hip hop stuff,
No, for anything. Like just as a sound engineer, when you're in a concert, you're like, yeah, I know he's just rapping over himself or singing over her own voice.
sometimes, but the majority of the time, it's surprisingly them. A lot of the time, unless there's like multiples of it. I see one person, I hear three things, then I know it's like,
Hmm.
okay, you've got something else going on. But for the smaller bands that can't afford to have all of that, they can't afford to bring out the background singers, they can't afford all of it. They want to give the audience that cool sound of the album. I don't see any issue with doing that. But there is a line though that
Yeah.
um, I will say that I do feel like there are some bands that I feel like lean on the click and lean on time code so much to where you're just going to hit play from the top of the show and go all the way through. And I understand that there's so many variables they want to all sync together. The artist in me kind of loves I think you said it before, I want to hear the artist and I want to hear your renditions of it. And as a artist, I would love to hear maybe something different than the album. I know it's cool to hear the album, but kind of maybe give you something a little bit
Right.
different than the exact same thing that I'm hearing. That's kind of what I want to see. But I think we're getting a lot better. There's been a lot of cool stuff that's been happening out there.
Okay. Let's talk about the touring itself and the career, the life of an art, people like you who go on tour, and also what happens in the background, because a lot we go wild for artists, and they are primarily the reason we go to concerts. But for the biggest show that you've done, how how many people does it really take to put together that one concert?
Let's just say for Metallica, they have 180 people they do just for local crew they hire for that day of the show. That's just for local people to come out.
Wow.
I mean, I think they have 96 trucks, and that's just you got
Wow.
96 just drivers. I mean, I think it's 96, but I mean, Taylor Swift, it's just insane how many
Right.
people that they have for it.
Right.
So you have entire cities that are going in and going out with it. It's just for the massive ones, you can get to hundreds of people on there.
Right. Right.
Um,
but
on
but
average, you would not. That's not the normal, though.
right. But for a big band like Pearl Jam, for
Sure,
example, yeah. But so you're saying that there are people that you hire locally, and then there are people that travel with the band. So I'm assuming that
correct.
front of the house and a monitor engineer, those people would travel with the band, right? That's you need, instead of
For a
hiring
larger band,
somebody local.
absolutely. Now, you do have local crew. This is one way if you want to get involved with music, you absolutely can do this. Every show has some sort of local labor, at least in the arena size, even some of the smaller ones, that you're there to help set up. You're there to push boxes. You're there to unload the truck. You're there to help set up the sound, set up the speakers, help set up the lights, and that's all hired there locally. But the touring crew is what's going to help dictate and uh, uh, order where it's all going. But yeah, you're anywhere from you could have 5 people, 3 people to 100 people coming and helping out for it. But if you want to get involved with this and you're at a local spot, you can get a local labor or
Hmm.
local crew and IATSE crew. You could jump in and learn all about it.
Right, right. Is there a difference between, this is out of curiosity, this is not a
Sure.
leading question. Is there a difference between how you put together a concert from a sound engineering perspective, between a pop concert or rock concert or a hip hop concert? Is there a difference?
In terms of how you mix it, sure,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. There is the first thing you're going to do is you want to listen to the artist. How does it sound? What sound are they trying to go for? The second part of that, you could talk with the band. What are they trying to emulate the album sound, or are they trying to do a live sound with it? But there are different things that are highlighted based upon the different types of bands, even down to how the kick drum sounds. For metal music, you want more of that slap sound. For pop music or hip hop music, you may want more of a thump sound for it. But there is absolutely different ways to be able to mix it and to make it sound based upon a number
What you
of different variables
Right.
and how that style and genre of music sounds. I mean,
Right.
it's going to hit different.
Yeah, yeah. So if, for example, a group says, "No, I want more bass," that would be your job as a sound engineer. This is you are the one
Sure,
that will make it happen.
absolutely. The front of house person, that's their job.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. All right. So back to touring. What's the hardest part, you would say? I know we discussed this a little bit, but like for those that are working behind the scenes, what's just the hardest part of doing all of this?
it's long hours, long hours. You're there from like 9 a.m. till 2 a.m. It's tough, and being gone from your family is a lot. Um, and you're doing it. You could be going. It's 2 weeks straight of working that kind of hours. It could take a lot. It could take its toll on you. Imagine going to your work. And then when you leave work, you go to your living room with all of your coworkers there. You can never leave away from your coworkers ever. You sleep with your coworkers, you eat with your coworkers, you work with your coworkers. So any fight you may have, you get to go home and deal with that. No, you're living with them in a
Hmm.
can going down the road.
All right.
So dealing with personalities as well could be tough, especially if you're an introvert. You just want your alone time. You don't want to be around people. You're always around people. There's also the tough part of coming home after that. you're so used to all this routine and all this chaos, and you're also a very important person everywhere you go. People are trying to cater to you. You're people are wanting to help you, and what do you need? And you come home to not that. I mean, you may not deal with that merch person every single day, but they're there, and you get so used to this kind of happening to where you come home, everything's all quiet, and you get this post-tour depression to where, man,
Mm,
this is kind of tough.
like a
Um,
withdrawal.
yeah, absolutely. So I'd say the hardest part is the hours. They're tough hours and they're hard, very
Right.
hard, especially when you're starting off.
Right. Okay. Let's go to your view on music.
Sure.
We both love music, but what do you think about this trend on music, especially pop music? They're ultra short. Usually, you hear a song for less than 3 minutes. And I heard about this artist said that he was given a list by an A&R of of a label on how he should make a song in order to make a hit, and it has to be short, less than 2 minutes. Not a lot of complex lyrics because people don't want to understand what you're saying about. So it has to be repetitive and it has to be very good for like lifestyle type of videos because they're catering to TikTok. And when I heard him say that, I was like, "Oh my god, the music industry is doomed." But what is your take on it?
There's somebody I really like. His name is Ryan Tedder. He is
Yes.
a One Republic. He's written a ton of songs for a ton of people, and uh, he's written some amazing music. And he was talking about how it's not the same as it used to be. People are nowadays writing hooks, putting it on TikTok, and if it does well, they write the rest of the song,
Yes.
which is fascinating. That you're, and as an artist, that's tough because you're creating your art form for the public, not trying to create a mass-produced sale to people. I guess I can't knock it for it, but it's just for me, you kind of ruin it. And you might as well go to AI for that. But you're also now having people headlining Coachella that has never done it before. That and you all see these concerts of it'll be quiet, all of a sudden the bridge comes and everybody sings the bridge and it's quiet again. And you could take it back a little bit even further because my dad used to own a recording studio, and I remember that they would have these index cards on the floor of all the songs and the keys, and it was the idea was how do you want the fan to experience the album from front to back, and you wanted to be able to give them that cool experience of going. And that's not a thing anymore. It's just these one hits, and we're so fast with them, especially on TikTok. Of we need these little 30-second songs where we can
Mm,
scroll through. And part of me wonders too, like how long is it sustainable for, and can artists sustain that? Once you have one, now you're getting signed, and they want you to keep hitting that again and again and again and again and again. And I just don't think that's sustainable. I could be wrong with that, but it's just so disposable of the artists. And they're one of the issues I've seen as well is that you'll have these managements that go and they find these young have these hits. They're headlining Coachella instead of doing the work and the grind to be able to. How do you work an audience? How do you work a crowd, especially a massive crowd? And they talk them into doing this amazing show, and they flop at that show in front of 30,000 people, all with their phones watching it, and they didn't have the time and or the experience to understand how does that work. And I think we could do a better service, especially the young artists, of let's take this time, take the paces, as help grow you, not just as an artist, but as a brand as well, and set you up for success, not just throwing things out for. But I guess I understand that you're wanting to strike while the iron's hot and be able to like churn it out. But I mean, I think COVID was a big deal for that. You saw a lot of hits that came through that just what happened to those guys?
right, right, right.
Great song, but another one hit wonder.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There were a lot. There were a lot of it, and I guess you're right. Part of it, I was kind of blaming COVID. Of course, it's not COVID's fault, but was kind of blaming COVID because what else can you do when you're stuck at home?
Yeah.
You're just on your phone. You're scrolling through. Are you particular about the emotional arc of a song? Is that something that you think will be total? If it is important to you, do you think that's something that will be totally lost given this trend, this TikTok trend?
Yeah, I think we're kind of doing a wall of sound and a lot of noise, and I love dynamics. And it's tough because I'm thankful that there's more access to independent people
Mm-hmm.
and anybody can put their music out, but the noise floor has also gotten a lot higher and it's harder to stand out through all of that noise. But it's cool. Like Billie Eilish, she did a fantastic album they did in their freaking bedroom and living room. How cool is that?
Right.
But also, it's really tough to be able to stand out. And there's a lot of artists out there that I think are having a really tough time, that are really sticking to the craft. They want to share their art form with it, but they can't plug through that for some reason because people are skirting through all that. They don't want to do some TikTok hit. They want to actually have the artist experience a song. But what I'm really hoping for is that and I've kind of seen this shift of people wanting to see stuff that is more genuine and more
Mm-hmm.
real and less polished, and they want some vulnerability with it. And I've noticed it with this TikTok, even with my stuff I do on my social medias. I try not to be, I want it to be polished, I want it to be look good, but I realized like my number one video was when I shot an iPhone and two iPads, and it's the content and the story. And what I'm enjoying about these things like these podcasts is cool because I think people are craving more long form stuff. I think Sleep Token did a very good job with their album, as it was a very different, very eclectic, very arcing with the story, with the songs with it, and I loved that. It wasn't so produced for the scroll, and
Right.
I hope to see more of that. And I think people are going to get more wanting more of that vulnerability and that rawness, at least
Okay.
hopefully, at least when they
Uh,
pull out those vinyl albums.
yeah. I was actually interviewing an owner of a record store, and he said that surprisingly, he's starting to see Gen Zers coming in, starting to come in the store. And it was just a funny story because, like, he said that the only thing he found weird was that when they come into the store, they talk like they're talking to a web browser, like their phone. Like they they wouldn't look at the person they're talking with, and they would just, like, when you're talking to an AI and asking a question like, "Hey, where's that album for?" Like, "Hey, I'm right here. You can talk to me. You can look in my eye." It's like, I was astounded with this story, but he said you won't believe like how common that is if a young person actually goes into his store.
I was at my buddy Chris Rabel's house. He does sound for Bruno Mars and Beyonce. He's a we're actually coming out with a video with him soon. But I was at his house and walking by, and I saw in his daughter's room there's a Taylor Swift album on the floor, an actually album. And I was asking, but it's like, yeah, my daughter will sit there and read the album and listen to it. And she goes through the entire process. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool that they're wanting to sit there and experience that and go through that. And I just think she's done a love it or hate it, fantastic job of connecting with the artists or their fans and be able to give them that whole experience. I'm hoping that with that, you're going to see a shift from just curating content to hopefully more in-depth music connection with fans, longer form stuff. At least I hope so with my long form content. If not, I'm screwed.
No, it is, even for me, long form is still the one that works the best. Short form is just there to generate views, I guess, but when it comes to actually connecting with the audience, it's still long form for me. So I think we're at, maybe there is, one person can consume both, but their
Mhm.
expectation will be different. So I guess this is my final question to you, and it actually relates to you, how you see music. How do you see live performances? What kind of role do you think it's going to play, given this generation that we have that's so used to doing things online? They apply for a job online, they get accepted online, they work online, and they build relationships online. Do you think live performances, concerts, CDs, vinyls, do you think there is still a space for that? And if it does, what kind of place do you think it will have in our consumption of music in the future?
Space for can you say that again? Sorry.
Like, do you, because people are just so used to doing everything online, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right, and
Okay.
streaming, yeah.
Now, um, There is a friend of mine who does a dinner with a lot of high level audio or people in the music industry and live sounds, and they were talking about the future of audio and what's going on. Is it going to be Atmos? Is it going to be speakers everywhere? What's going on with it? And I think one of the guy's daughter was there, and she was 18 years old. Like, hey, she's our. Let's ask her what it is. And her response is like, "You guys just don't get it." And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, we don't care how it sounds. We just want to share it with our friends. And they all like, oh my gosh, and they just wanted to be able to share it on TikTok and be able to share that. And I thought that was fascinating.
Right.
One thing I shipped I have seen, and I did a video with Creed recently, and Kyle was talking about there's a girl in the audience who was filming it, and she had more followers than the band, which is nuts. So arguably she had more of an influence of that show than the band did,
Right.
which is crazy to think about. But I think the
Right.
mindset's also going to be how does it sound and how does it look on here? You see a lot of lighting directors that'll have their phone there for it. They'll say like, how does it look here as well? Because this is going to be more promotion than maybe that show.
Mm,
So I think there's been a lot of focus on how does it look? How does it sound? How does it sound on here? Can you share it? And how is that experience that are people having as well instead of just coming and seeing stuff there? So I think that's kind of the future with it. I think that I know there's been some virtual stuff. I know COVID, they tried to do all the crazy experiential stuff. I think that what people still want I think guys want to hear the kick drum and see the hot girl dance, hear the vocals for it. They want that experience. They want that cool festival. I think people want that shared experience with people and they want to share it with their friends. I think that's kind of where the future is going with it. I do know that when I came up, and maybe for you too, is that there was a lot of like garage bands and people kind of jamming together and creating bands. And I was asking some of the younger people, like, hey, do you have any garage bands? Like, what is that? And they didn't know. I was like, well, you kind of get together and you play, you do like a battle of bands. Like, no, and there's people with laptops that are making beats or they want to be a YouTuber, which is fascinating to
right. Right.
me. So
Right.
the push towards that, it'd be interesting to see how that is with the music industry later on.
Right. Right.
I'm not sure with that answer, but I think that there's going to be a focus on, and there is already a focus on, how does it look online? How does it look on social media? I think that's the big push with this. But I think the experiential thing is still going to be great. I still think people want to go there and have that experience and have that enjoyment with it and be able to connect with the artist in this very special way. I think Taylor Swift, love her or hate it, did a fantastic job with that. Um, and building communities around that. So I don't know
Right.
if that
Right.
answered the question, but
Okay. Yeah, yes, you did. You did, certainly. Well, thank you, Nick, and I hope that BTS, which a lot of my subscribers are actually BTS fans, and they're going to go on tour hopefully 2026 or maybe end of 2025. I hope we
okay.
can watch them. And maybe we can sit
Yeah.
down again and just analyze like just their live performance. And
Yeah.
you can
Maybe
tell
if I
me
can get
about.
an interview with them, we could talk and ask your viewers if they want to ask some questions.
Yeah, yeah, certainly, certainly. Let's keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time. It was an honor to be able to talk with you.
Okay, thank you, Nick, for coming. Is the if they want to find you, where can they go outside of your website?
Sure. Yeah, this is delacruz.com or everything else is under this is Dela Cruz. It'll be on Instagram, it's on YouTube, it's everywhere. You can Google Nick Dela Cruz if you want, but everything that name, this is Dela Cruz, is every platform for
Okay.
it. Keep it simple. Or to
All
email
right.
me, Nick at this is Dela Cruz.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you for having me.